for us. And we've done more in the last 2 months than we have in the last 2 years, so we're excited about that. So our needs are, well, I haven't told you about a nonprofit that we started as well with for teens and young adults to thrive mentally and emotionally through conscious awareness. So I am looking for network opportunities and then also people who care about this space and want to get involved with this space and use technology into mainstream in emotional intelligence and really help companies thrive that way. So connections and customers.
So, Christy, you're going to need a mouthpiece, you're going to need money, you're going to have resources, you're going to need expertise and mentoring from different industries, right?
Absolutely.
Could you talk to David Politis first? And he's right here. This is David.
Yes, David. Hi.
You guys talk real quick. Step in. Take the microphone. You guys can step back just a little bit.
Hi, Christy.
Hi, how are you? Okay.
I'm fine.
So when we talk about influence in people, tell me what you offer.
Well, for more years than I want to admit, 3.5 decades, I've helped companies figure out how best to position very technical things so their great uncle or their grandmama understand this very technical thing. So when you're talking about vibonics and emotional intelligence and how to understand why that matters and how that can help not just the individuals, the employees, but also their bosses and their partners and their clients, that's kind of a, why do I care about that? And so messaging that is actually really critical.
I actually agree. I feel like Forbes and a lot of Harvard has come out with some really cool things to really help us understand emotional intelligence. Our innovation is to actually show you your emotional intelligence through your voice. So how would you do it in that way?
The easiest way for something like this, I think, would be to actually show somebody, right? It's one thing to read something. It's something else to actually see it happen. And so depending upon how Vibonics technology works, if you could show colors or graphs to show, oh, this person's really animated, or this person's kind of down and everything, that would actually be very interesting to show that. Can you do that in real time?
So we do it in real time,
okay.
And we show 4 different areas. Oh, we're passing? Oh, okay. So, can we talk more?
Sure. I have a full-time job, but maybe on this side we can talk.
And how do you feel really quick about teens and young adults and increasing their emotional intelligence?
Gee, as my wife and I have talked about for some time, she taught me the average male's brain doesn't stop developing until they're 25.
You're right.
Well, okay.
You're right. It's the
prefrontal cortex,
yep.
Exactly. And it was our middle daughter who pointed out to my wife, Dad has 3 different main personalities. There's Pops. He's the grumpy old dude. There's Dad. And then there's Davy. And Davy's the naughty 9-year-old. He knows better, but still does it anyway. That was like a real epiphany for them, and then for me as well. So yeah, I still occasionally do inappropriate things.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time.
You bet.
Eric Olson and Brenda.
It's such a good story. The biggest moment of my career.
Eric and Brenda.
The power that you felt in that.
You have an amazing combination here of an exceptionally motivated mom that needs to solve some problems. I know part of your motivation is with your grandson, and I don't even think we need to talk about investment at this point. Can you share some of the journeys both of you have had in finding things for kids to do, to be able to give them the ethic that they need and to help them on their way?
And I know that that's such a place of empowerment.
Yeah, I
love that, and I think
obviously very passionate about getting teenagers into the workforce. I feel like they learn skills that they need to grow and develop and make them functioning adults and contributors to society and the economy. And I also feel that the current solutions in place to help them find the right jobs are really not there. And so I built Jipe to help that specifically, like give them opportunities to see who's hiring in an easy way. Because we know this generation is very different. They want their technology to be very fast and easy to use and intuitive, and a lot of the job search platforms out there are not that way, and they don't have patience for it. So if we can provide them more solutions at their fingertips, I think they're more likely to look and explore their options in a much more interesting way for them.
Couldn't agree more. Coming out of the pandemic to that problem, that situation has been significantly exacerbated by the pandemic. Now we have over us, right, mental health. It's such a big deal. My wife and I, on the giving side of our lives, we're spending time with disadvantaged communities. It's even dramatically worse, right, where in the case of our 13-year-old grandson, non-speaker, he will need care and assistance for the rest of his life. And that's the situation for, 2 out of 100 people, basically, in the population. But then it's even more profound, right? Because the other thing with the disadvantaged people is at age 21, they fall out of every known government program and they fall into the basement of their parents or their caregiver's home, potentially for a long time. And so we're looking at all kinds of ed tech, job tech, and in our own case, as I mentioned earlier with Audicon, the only way we can help someone on the spectrum succeed inside of a corporation is to eliminate everything that corporation has ever known about HR, like starting with the interview. Just doesn't work with someone on the spectrum. So we found that we have to create a 24/7 life and job coaching function for everyone that's on our team. But anyways, there's a multitude of opportunities to be looked into. But yeah, big deal.
Sure. I think there's a lot of work to be done for this diversity and inclusion space, for underprivileged communities and those who need help, like who have learning disabilities or other types of disabilities, for sure. And creating platforms that allow them to still be able to not be excluded, like really have that inclusion piece built into the technology.
Yeah.
And I think it's possible, and I think that we can make strides doing it.
So the other side of my world is we have an incubator that, let's just say when a parent has an autistic kid, they're kind of all in. And if those parents are like husband and wife professors at MIT, they probably have a thought or two about what might be the art of possible. And so new ideas and innovation, therapy, and discovery is happening in this space, in this neurodiverse space. So we're also running through a group called Multiple, an incubator for very, very early stage stuff. So I look at decks all day long of like really, really cool tech. And I'd urge you to take a look at joshin.com as one example.
Okay.
And I can send you a lot more information on that.
Great. I would love to take a look at that.
Eric Olofsson and Brenda Anderson. Beautiful. You get to serve.
Thank you.
Ted McCaleer, not Scheffler, as well as Trina Limpert. I can't have a retort there. I'm just going to shut up and let you guys talk.
I wanted to start by just responding to some of that topic that came up, because it's relevant in multiple ways. I mean, we're talking about women in the workforce, we're talking about moms, but a lot of these moms are caring for autistic children. I have a lot of the women in my program right now that are struggling, and the reason why they're coming into tech is because it gives them the flexibility to care. Right? Remote working enables a lot of these women that haven't had opportunities to be able to work and provide for their family and care for their family at the same time. And I think there's a mindset shift that needs to happen, that you can do both. It's not an or. I mean, we had 4.5 million women leave the workforce in November of 2021 because they felt like it was an or. It's either I work or I care for my family. And I think there's this important intersection of understanding and that it can be done, and enabling and creating leaders and companies that support that. So I don't know if you've had any perspectives on that, or how to enable that and within this workforce.
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, you mentioned that you're participating with venturecapital.org, and you'll be part of the We Rock group next week.
Yes,
so,
very excited about that.
Super excited about that myself. I think it's important to recognize that our good friend Tara Spalding has just joined venturecapital.org and is going to bring more programming to things like this that you're talking about.
Right.
I think I share a similar interest to you relative to getting more people into the tech workforce. I've been in tech for 23 years here in Utah, and my focus has actually been on 8th grade through 12th graders having the skills to help early stage entrepreneurs, right?
Right.
So whether it's, moms at home that are trying to take care of kids, whether it's 8th graders through 12th graders that are bored in the traditional schooling system and want experiential learning,
Yeah.
there's something we all got to appreciate, and that is in these bootstrapping early stage companies, any resource can be a good resource.
Absolutely.
It gives experiential learning and resume building experiences to the moms or to the young people, and then enables them to broaden their horizon and maybe become an entrepreneur, the next time themselves, right? So,
Exactly. The example is one that I was actually just talking about with a company just this last week, which was they were saying we really focus on K through 12, which is really, really important. One of the things that I like to call to mind is we work with moms entering the tech force as they become examples. So of the 300 plus women we've put through the program so far, there's over 650 kids that are supported. And a lot of our women are actually going through classes with their kids.
right.
So they're, and you think about having that role model in the home and the social and economic impacts of that, like how do you really hit K through 12? Look at the parents. Like, how do you, together? So I think
Right.
both of those things put together can really make a difference.
Well, and the key I've noticed, you and at least 3 of the other ladies that were on the panel up here today all have a nonprofit as a side hustle while you're working on your, for-profit company. And I think that's a really great way to amplify these issues. And that is, as Clint Betts said yesterday, that's where we become uncompetitive with each other, right?
Yeah.
When we get our particular nonprofits together and focus on, some of these macro issues like getting more people into the, tech workforce and empowering people, whether it's a stay-at-home mom or whether it's a, a student, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a power in that community, and I have to say I've been very, very grateful to be in this community that has supported us like they have, and there is a need for all of these organizations. We partner with the higher education system, our tech community, the industry, as well as our government programs, as well as many nonprofits. And we couldn't do this all alone. So I think that power of pulling together and everybody getting involved is how we reach.
Yeah. Well, I hear the clapping in the background for Steve Young. That's not clapping for us, but maybe that's
they are.
Maybe that's
Maybe
a
they
cue to move on to the next group.
If I were to do Joel Meister talk and carry on some of these subjects, would you all have come to a podcast if I were to do something like that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. No.
Disperse them and talk about it.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Joel Meister.
Here we go. David Sinclair and our friend Don Ballot.
We're going to lower the microphone if you
Yeah.
don't mind.
With 2 T's. We are getting tight, but Chris's co-people are not there, so we're going to keep going with this cohort until John and Tom and Richard show up. Okay, you're new to Utah. You came to 1 million cups, and the rest of your life has been just crazy. And, well, the same thing for you.
Absolutely.
Why don't you guys just talk about whatever it is that you talk about?
If you don't mind, I'd love to continue the conversation that was just had.
That's exactly what I was going to ask
A
for.
different twist on it a little bit, because
Absolutely.
if I look at my organization today, we don't have headquarters. Everyone works from home. So my entire organization works from home. And I was actually just sitting there running my calculator. You saw me doing that. Over 70% of people who work for my company are stay-at-home parents. Now notice I said parents, because actually almost half of those people are stay-at-home dads. So the guy who runs all of my customer service operations actually is a stay-at-home dad with 2 toddler girls.
That's wonderful.
And it's really funny when we do our customer service team calls because he's always got one of his daughters in his lap during the call. But I'm a very big believer that people need to be there for their families, need to be able to help with their families. And honestly, I've spent most of my career working in organizations where you can work from home. So I guess my question to you, you run a phenomenal organization. I'd love to just mention the organizations, everybody hears it. But then also talk about how you're addressing that need. And in particular, we had a discussion the other night in the bar, and I won't use the terms we use in the bar.
We did. Let's not.
We need to address the entire scope of these stay-at-home parents?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So we had a lovely conversation the other day. And so the difference with smartmomgig.com is that we are literally going out into the workforce and out into find these women, and we're trying to create an entirely new workforce for them. So I grew up in cable media, so through Comcast, DirecTV, AT&T, Charter, I saw women from a frontline perspective as well as all the way up to C-suite leaving because there was a family matter that needed to be attended to. So I appreciate very much that your company is on the forefront of bringing in parents as opposed to and letting them work from home, as opposed to a lot of society right now and larger companies specifically, that it is still an issue of people being able to work from home. There's a lot of companies that are now trying to force all people back to work, and the rules have changed. So last month, it was just reported there are 4 million people with long COVID that literally cannot go back to work. And this is just the beginnings of the reporting of long COVID. I have a woman that works for us that is now on a heart medication due to COVID that her insurance doesn't cover. She simply can't go back to work. So I think that that's how everything is changing, and I think that it's important for more companies to think exactly the way that you think, which is it's not only important for women to go back to work, but for all people to consider the health benefits, the medical well-being of being able to support their families or do what they need to do, simply not having to do the traditional structure of 9 to 5.
Talk a little bit for a second about your view, because I basically bring people in and onboard them and they start working for me.
Yeah.
My wife herself actually had a real struggle returning back to work. How do you help these people, the parents that are staying at home, return back to work? Because that's a big transition for a lot of them who've taken a year to have kids, or taken time off to take care of sick relatives or parents or whatever. How do you help them make that transition?
So I too had that issue. When my son was born, he had a medical issue, and he's fine now. But I saw that firsthand of how hard it was to return to the workforce. So our platform takes that into consideration, and it's more of a skills matching. So the women only need to put in 200 words on each skill as to why the company should hire them. So it makes it an easy transition for the companies to go through and read and find the right person for them, as well as the women themselves to put themselves out there and consider a new way to work.
That sounds great. That sounds like a really great start. So we'll have to continue this conversation.
I look forward for you hiring many women.
I hope not just women.
Yes.
I'd like you to stay here. Thank you very much, David. Thank you. Gentlemen from Hydrenesis and Christy, if you could join John, please. This is going to be a growth conversation, because I know that you guys have just recently done a little bit. Well, you've been involved in other things. I mean, Bob, you've spun off 72 companies or something like that? Or?
No.
71.
We're squeezing in.
37.
Okay.
How many did you say?
37. I haven't spun them off. I've been on the board of 37 of them and helped them and raise money for them.
Wow.
So we're talking.
So, Dawn, last night, you and I had a long conversation.
We did.
And the topic of the conversation was primarily about your documentation for your offering. So, what were the salient points, the things that you didn't actually realize when we were talking? Because a lot of the issues with going out and raising money is you walk in the door with either documents or a pitch or a proposal or a narrative that has red flags for the investors. So can you share a couple of the red flags we talked about?
And thank you for the free consulting services I got last night.
We had burgers. So
we had burgers, so yeah.
Let's make this rapid fires. We have the next segment at 10:30. So let's talk growth in 20 seconds.
So what?
120 seconds growth. All right.
I can assure you can.
All right. So tell me about your growth projections that we talked about.
So one, you have to know your numbers, and if you can't rattle off your numbers, you're not going to make it. They're not going to believe in you. Number two, you have to understand the market, and just because you understand the market doesn't mean that others are understanding the market, and you have to be able to discuss that
Yeah,
in a
and you
very
have to be-
clean
you-
and clear.
Right, and you have to be able to document those numbers in a zero-based financial model. Where you
Right.
start with the lowest common denominators of the revenue and then build your model instead of starting with, well, we think we can do $3 million in year 3. How do we make those numbers fit?
And that was my number 3, was really getting to that point of starting from the zero base, so that if you're pitching and a potential wants to move the numbers around because they don't believe in your numbers, if you start with the zero base, they can change the numbers and it won't change your model.
If you have a variable-driven model
Yes.
and it's zero-based, then you can change those variables with the prospective investor and go from there.
And it's funny, people ask me,
I think we
So
learned
that-
also from talking to some of the different angel groups and the different VC groups that we've been speaking with today is starting off with your first 6 months, right? That's important, making sure that those are very reasonable projections and targets, and then building off of that for your execution, right? And so that's what I think a lot of investors are looking at.
That's where the growth comes in.
Right.
Is after that 6 months of doing your business, and then now how are you going to scale it?
Exactly.
Absolutely. It's nice to be able to eat the elephant whole, but it's not realistic.
Right.
And I think that was the position that I was really coming from. And
Joel
So
is
thank you.
Joel is the elephant at the door.
Where can I talk to the camera directly? Right here?
Oh, hey.
Thank you, Utah State Legislature, for considering psilocybin mushrooms for treatment for microdosing for those with mental illnesses. It's essential that we pass this, we get it through. We need to move towards more organics, not for recreation, but for the assistance that psychotropic drugs cannot provide.
Yes, I agree. I've seen the miracles myself. Absolutely.
That's all. All right, you guys are done. Get the way out of here. We got to go out and start up ignition. Thank you so much.
Yes, I agree.
Did you guys get some exit photos with Megan? Thank you so much. Those that were just on camera, if you could all go get exit photos, thank you. All right, come on.